Bienvenidos y welcome to the Biz Bruja podcast, where we're claiming our powerful intuition, our sacred medicina, embracing our magic and healing ancestral patterns, invoke powerful creations in our own well-being, our lives, familias, community, and our businesses. Remembering that our businesses are so important at this time. I'm the creatrix of this blogcast, the Biz Bruja herself, Vanessa Codorniu, a modern-day bruja, fourth-generation psychic medium, clinical hypnotist, energy healer, and soul biz mentor and coach. An Argentine-American who started reading adults at 16, became a professional intuitive at 22, and now guides creatives, intuitives, healers, and entrepreneurs to break through fears, connect to the practical power of their intuition so they can serve the world powerfully. Hola, mi gente bella. Hello, beautiful people. Excited to be here with you today. I wanted to talk about the full moon in Sagittarius before it went away. And then we start going into a whole other moon phase. And then there's other work that we need to do. Now, this full moon came in a week where we have peaceful protests in LA and other parts of the country where the folks who went on the Freedom Flotilla to bring food to the folks in Gaza are nowhere to be found. There's a lot going on in the world. And with this full moon, whenever we talk about full moons, we are talking about seeing the big picture. We're talking about seeing the thing in its entirety. Now, I know that so many folks, as we all do, we're stubborn. And we like to hold on to our beliefs and how we see things, and especially to our wounding and our pain. And I think that because people held on to their wounding and their pain, and they were manipulated through their wounding and their pain, right, by powers that be, that the state of the world finds itself where it is. And so instead of being able to expand into compassion, understanding that we truly are all one, that every human on earth deserves a due process, that every human in la tierra on earth deserves water, love, food, safety, protection, justice. People have been convinced through their own grief and their own strife and also fear to seek out a scapegoat. Now, this is as old as history. I've talked about it before. To me, it's an ancestral, intergenerational trauma. And it's something that's been going on for so long. I talked about it in another podcast, especially Latinos who have roots in Spain, because most of us do, right? Most Latinos have roots in Spain, and then, right, our people from Spain came into Latin America, and through either rape, oppression, colonization, we are who we are today. And our families were all impacted differently. But most of us have colonized and colonized within our families. Most of us are part Middle Eastern, part Spanish, part European, part Jewish, maybe part Arabic, also part African, West African specifically, and also indigenous from North and South America. And especially anybody who has any Mexican roots, right? The borders crossed the Mexicans, not really the Mexicans crossing the border. So there's so much here. The thing is, a lot of what I think has brought us to the place that we are in the world is because of intergenerational trauma on top of generational trauma, on top of generational trauma, on top of fear. Each and every one of us has ancestral and indigenous, and when I mean indigenous, I mean also indigenous European, indigenous Israeli, Jewish, Palestinian, indigenous peoples, the people who were on the land and have been on that land, right? We all carry the traumas of what happened during colonization, what happened during slavery, what happened during enslavement, tribal wars for hundreds and hundreds, and even into maybe, who knows, 1,000 years. We carry these memories. And because of our fear, right, because of our fears, conscious, unconscious, known and unknown, because, I mean, usually we're like trying to get to work, trying to get the kids fed, tratando de hacer todas las cosas. So we're not usually thinking, well, I think my great-great-great-great-grandmother was burned at the stake somewhere in Latin America or Europe, right? No, we're living our lives, and then we're being fed what we're being fed. And as we filter through the information that is usually incomplete through the perspectives of present life trauma, present life dysfunctional situations, present life systems that are unfair to people of color, right? To anyone that is not white, and even to white gay folks and other folks who are in the minorities, right? So these multi-layered traumas of just having to survive our lives, having personal pain, illness, stories, work, lack thereof, abundance, and then we're being presented a plate of, garbage, or we could call it food. And then we're making decisions, bringing in our leaders and bringing in our people based on all of the layers of trauma, seen and unseen, known and unknown. And then we're having our fear, our lack, our scarcity buttons being pushed. And when that's happening, we are choosing out of reaction. So I've spoken, and we're going to get into the full moon in Sag, I promise, but Sagittario, come on, truth teller, speak the truth, right? And I do not purport to believe that I'm the only truth. We all have our truths, depending, right? But there are some truths that I think are self-evident, and there are some truths that I don't think we could deny across the board. And that is that we are all human. If we're human, we're human. No one is more human than others, right? That we're all worthy and deserving of freedom, due process, just by existing and being born and being human. And third of all, that, we should go through a process before we're maligned and sent out of the country. And so, yes, I'm talking about immigration as well. And that's been very heartbreaking for so many of us who are Latino or not Latino, for so many of us who are immigrants and not immigrants. Across the board, the empathy is really high right now. Jupiter just went into Cancer last week. And so while it's bringing blessings and asking us to cleanse our home and to do things that are positive and supportive for our home and for ourselves, and to tend to whatever area Cancer is lighting up in your chart. So you could go to a freenatalchart.com, right? Or alabe.com, where I think there's so many cafe astrology. Look up your information. I like to use Placidus. Chani on her app does full house, right? Which is different. It changes everything. And you look at where Cancer is being lit up. So Jupiter, the benefic planet of blessings, the bendiciones, is coming in to light up that part. So for me, it's going to be my self-worth, my values, and it's also going to be my financial situation. And so that's the blessings that I'm receiving. At the same time, the things that I value and the things that I care about are social justice, are due process of law for all of our people. And with this full moon that just came in yesterday, Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, this is something that we're going to see highlighted. Now, I know so many of us are too busy. So many of us don't know where to look for our news. I look at a lot of news that's not American. So I try to watch news that's from another country looking back at us. If I look at CNN, then I also look at Fox, at little bits of it, right? And then I compare what's going on. I look at other fonts of news and other places of information. But what I do know, and I do see, and we know and we see, that there are people out there who have their cameras on, right? My phone's right here. And that they are recording live how many people are taken off the streets. And so if you're somebody who doesn't want to look at the news, and I'm with you, I really don't. I just look at specific parts of the news and specific times to look at certain things. We need to know something. Because what's happening right now, this instability, this disrespect to humanity, is not only triggering trauma, intergenerational pain throughout our ancestral lineage, like moving up through the ancestors and moving down into our future generations, it's also causing us stress and pain. And remember, so many people have stayed safe because they just shut up and looked away, right? Historically. But are people really safe? Listen, I was born in another country, in Sudamerica, and I am a naturalized citizen. And I'm also afraid of sometimes walking in a peaceful protest, right? So the situation is, and I've been seeing this on threads, and I've been seeing this online, and I've been seeing it in so many social media, that all Latinos are feeling it. Many Jewish people are feeling it. Maybe Palestinian people, definitely Palestinian people are feeling it. people of every ilk, every path. And how do we come to a place where there is a truth? Because there's so many truths, right? This land belongs to me. No, it belongs to me. No, and there's so much fear because nobody's illegal. No one is illegal on stolen land. Is something that will cause fear to people whose families have been here 300, 400, 500 years and have accrued land and wealth, right? Generational wealth throughout time. And they don't want that because it means they might lose the money, the land, the prosperity, and the privileges. And so there's a lot of truths, and people could be like, well, my family, they came here and they had to deal with the indigenous people and they had to deal with it. Yeah. Because when you steal things, you have to deal with people defending their space. And so there are so many truths. How do we get to those core truths? And so I offer to all of you just some of the core truths that I value. It's not so much about sides politically. It's not so much about what political group is better than the next. What I look at and what I feel and what I stand for is social justice, equality, due process, not taking people off the streets or out of their homes without due process, not disappearing people into vans and then not knowing where they're located. So I know you may have come up into this podcast hoping to just hear about the full moon in Sag, but I feel like the full moon in Sag is inspiring me also to speak up about this because it's so important. And I have been speaking on it privately a lot. But that could have been my family too, you know what I mean? That could be any one of us. And we need to start putting down our, people are, it's so interesting to me. People are like, well, there's people who are on welfare getting payouts and they have BMWs or they have this or they have that. Like I hear that, especially from people in Florida and other areas, right? But yet you're not complaining about the billionaires who are being forgiven their tax debts, right? So that one or two person that you saw who had their nails done and the latest phone bothers you when it's not a lot of money that they're getting. But yet the billionaire is getting pardoned. So we're in a country right now where billionaires are getting pardoned, but federal money is being taken away from services such as school lunches, such as PBS, such as other organizations I'm a part of, right? Organizations that I've worked for, have supported. It's impacted my work. A lot of my clients are actually federal employees. A lot of my clients are immigrants. A lot of my clients are BIPOC. A lot of my clients are Latinx, my community, my people. And so in this full moon in Sagittarius, I ask that you look deeper. Because I know, in Florida, I've heard this a lot. We came separately. We came differently. We didn't do that. We didn't do that. No hicimos eso. But I also know that in Florida, there's a group of people that have gotten more help than anybody else because of the government they're escaping. Whereas if you come from Argentina, right, Uruguay, Peru, you're not getting all the help that some other people got. So are we supposed to be mad? Or it's just how it is because of the country you came from? And so a lot of this division has been brought upon us so we can continue fighting. So we can continue denying colorism. We can continue denying that we're one people. And I don't mean just Latinos. I mean, we're all one freaking people. Some of us lost our melanin. Some of us have more. And you know what I mean, through time and through generations. And so what are some of the truths that are vibrating for you during this full moon? What are some of the irreconcilable truths where they cannot be changed, they cannot be altered? And what I propose and what I share is that we're all one, that we're all human, that we all need to be taken care of, that we need to feel safe, that we need to have due process, that justice, respect. And that's what's happening on Earth is not good, and it's not going away anytime soon. The full moon in Sagittarius, though, is telling us to dive deep into our truth, dive into our values, dive into what is really important for us to carry on as a people. So I want to talk a little bit about the full moon, and I've made some notes because this is an emotional time for me, and I think for all of us. We're also coming up to Juneteenth soon, and so there's a lot to celebrate, and yet also a lot to fight for, right? And so on June 11th, it was 3:43 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the full moon in Sag, shown in the sky, right? That's yesterday. This lunation was happening in the sign of the centaur. And the centaur, traditionally in Greek mythology, is medio hombre y medio caballo, right? And they were like the sages. And the centaur is offering us an invitation to embrace authenticity, committing to honoring the truth of who we are, but it's not just us. Because Sagittarius is also an expansive sign, right? That deals with diversity, deals with other countries, that deals with global truth. And so we're moving toward uncharted territory with faith, and that's the very deep invitation. The Sagittarius full moon, the strawberry moon, is particularly relevant for people born with planets or angles in the late degrees of mutable signs like Gemini, Virgo, Sag, and Pisces. These individuals are going to be impacted by this full moon and have the opportunity to experience a really big shift in mindset, in perspective, and some sort of breakthrough understanding, right? And a lot of people that I know, they want something to come from the outside. They want like the big blessing, the big job offer, the big breakthrough, be on TV, be an influencer, get the money, maybe be given the medicine to become healthier, a lot of these things. And those are important things and they're needed. We need the exterior changes. But what are the changes that we actually have control over, the changes that come from within? The changes that can stem from forgiveness, the changes that can come from creating boundaries where we no longer let people harm us or hurt us, where we don't have to do it in a dramatic, nasty way. We can just be like, you know what, this doesn't work for me anymore. And so when we're talking about the full moon in Sagittarius, because it's a full moon, we are now seeing truths in a bigger way. We are invited to see the holistic picture, not only for us, for ourselves personally, but for the collective. And that's why I started with the collective and my personal viewpoint and the invitation for all of us to understand what's at stake, that it's not really about the price of eggs or are we going to get more taxes back or not. It's paying attention to what's really happening. So many times in history, we were like, oh my God, how did people in World War II, why did people let the people be taken, right? Why? How could this have happened? The riots in the streets during the civil rights marches and all this, right? We asked these questions while we were in school, cuando éramos niños, and now we're like, it's happening. Of course, some of us could feel with our hands tied, and that's why I'm here doing this podcast, because I'm like, well, maybe I could bring up the subject and I could talk, and in this way, bring a message to the world of the people who are listening, who maybe shares it with somebody else. That it's beyond political sides, it's beyond who has more money or less money, even though that is an important part of this. Because those who have more are getting more, while those who are struggling are getting things taken away from them, namely their rights, namely their opportunities, right? So that is an important thing, but it's really more about how do we honor each other as humans and siblings on this earth. And so Gemini, Virgo, Sag, and Pisces, the mutable signs, are going to be stepping into a big change, a big shift. I'm like, oh my God, because I have all of that in my chart. It's not my sun, but it's like all my other planets. So these individuals are going to be impacted by this full moon and have the opportunity to have a big shift. What is the big shift that we're wanting to bring in? I ask you to let it be something internal. When we make the big shifts internally, we have more of an opportunity for the outer shifts to join us, right? Creating alignment within us allows us to attract, which is an alignment outside of us. So we're being asked to let go of some of our old narratives, outdated beliefs, and commit to following the path of what's true for us in devotion and determination. A lot of you who want to create businesses and do things, or even just start a hobby, have been putting it off because you might feel, ay Dios mío, the world is suffering. But remember that the full moon in Sagittarius and Jupiter in Cancer is also about nurturing your joy, nurturing what lights you up. Because this is the long term. This is the long fight. This is the long struggle. Things are not going to change overnight, although they did kind of come to light overnight. It's going to take a minute. And so for us to feed and nurture our well-being, our joy, our self-love, the love of our family, our food, to get our rest, to get our movement, to get our water, to get our time, to get our prayer on, and to get our laughter on, is holy and sacred. And so this is a time where we are asked to follow our true path. That doesn't mean martyrdom, that doesn't mean self-denial, but it's going to be growing in momentum, right? It's like the emotions are rising. Now the full moon came in. And I want to ask you, right? Because on this full moon yesterday, we had the sun and the moon forming a 180-degree angle. It's an opposition. Oppositions are aspects, right, of polarization that activate two complementary signs and ask us to find a harmonious way forward. And that's what's happening now, right? Do I just focus on myself, not watch the news, and just do this to myself? Or do I just sit here and suffer with the world all of the time? How do we stand up for what we believe in, but also tend to ourselves? And that's the sacred question here. The moon in Sagittarius is now opposite the sun in Gemini, and it's bringing our attention to how we think, what we believe, the lens through which we see the world. The Sagittarius full moon is an opportunity for us to feel into, think into, connect into our relationship with what we believe. What is our vision for our lives? And I know it's so hard right now because of everything that's happening. We don't even know. I've known people who are holding back in their business because I'm like, financially, people aren't spending money on this right now. We still need to have a bigger vision. Even if things are doubtful, even if things are stressful, what is our bigger vision? How do we find our joy and our purpose and keep ourselves safe while also honoring our values, serving the collective, and also staying in abundance and health, right? And so it's a time to think on, feel into what are beliefs, what is the philosophy of our life, and how do we move through this and continue to create it. This is a time where it's a quest for truth, right? It's a quest for truth. How do, again, we keep moving forward? How do we honor that which is true for us? And how do we find the truths that are interconnected? Because sometimes we focus too much on our own truths and we kind of ignore the collective. I was just watching the series, the TV show Girls, right? And I know it's great, it's well written, etc. And I know that the point may be to just highlight the fact that this woman was a Nepo baby, and I'm not taking away her talent. I'm just saying is a Nepo baby and had a lot of funding and help to make it big. How she really focused on, she centered on white lives, right? And then when we look at Sex and the City in the past, how it centered really on white lives. And I grew up in New York, and I'm like, how the hell did you ever create a film, a TV series, a show where there's actually no diversity in the most diverse place, in the most diverse city? But then I remembered that I lived in Manhattan, but I also lived in Queens. And to me, you couldn't bump into a Latino in Queens, and you couldn't bump into people from other places. And so they shared their truth in that movie, right? They shared their truth that their world was what it was mainly white. And they didn't take into account that there's also other people and there are also other stories. Now, we can say that's a lack of representation, and I will say it's a lack of representation, but it's also driving the point home. And so, and I was watching that and I'm like, where are we? Donde estamos? Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? And I was like, how could they not? I grew up, I partied with everybody. I went to NYU, but then again, I'm not a Nepo baby. My parents were not on the board of the Guggenheim. My father came here at 17 and was working in a factory. My abuela was also working in the factory, and so was my mom. And then, my abuela became a cleaning lady, and then eventually she was able to be retired by her kids. So, different realities. And that's why I say we all have our truths. For these people who created these shows, they're like, well, that's my truth. I hung out with mostly white people. It's not like I'm not trying to be diverse, but this is my story. That's their truth. And so how do we move forward where we are more inclusive, right? And I know now diversity and inclusion is just a bad word, but to me it's not. It's true human nature. True humanity is intertwined, and survival on this planet is intertwined for me. So what are some of the themes that the full moon in Sagittarius has brought to us and is still bringing to us? Bold expansion, right? It's a fire sign. It's wisdom. This lunation encourages to take daring leaps. And that's why I'm doing this episode. I'm taking a daring leap. I haven't talked about this as much, only in my private memberships and my one-on-one sessions, in my personal life. right? So I'm taking a leap. I'm talking about something that some people might be like, ay, Dios mío, Vanessa, I don't want to talk about this. But here I am. So whether they're emotional leaps, creative, physical, this full moon is calling us to dream big, to travel inward and outward, to trust that the universe is rooting for us, even though it's looking overwhelming. Truth telling, which we're already started on that, right? Truth telling and revelation. Sagittarius is a seeker of higher truth. Under this moon, hidden truths will come out because it's the fullness. We get to see the thing holistically. So take a moment, journal, what is some reality or truth that you've come to embrace about your life, your relationships, yourself, your career, maybe your mindset, and what needs to go and what deeper truth is arising so then you can now transform how you're seeing your world and your life. Balancing, which we talked about earlier, right? The polarization, balancing idealism and reality. I know we're all spiritual and we're listening to this, pero Dios mío, no hay que hacer el spiritual bypass. No se puede decir, ay, tú trabajas y todo va a salir bien, right? Because we can't just say, oh, work hard and it's all going to be okay. I grew up with that. I grew up with, you got to break your back working, right? I grew up with that. And in effect, I worked harder than a lot of people around me because I was raised that way as an immigrant. And now I'm proud of it, but I'm also like, let me take my chill. Let me take my rest for a minute because I was not an immigrant that came with a lot of privilege, right? Yes, I have light skin privilege, but not financial privilege. And so these are things that have impacted us. How do we balance out the optimism and the hope and the boldness and the courage, right? But also the truth of what is really happening in the world. And so we have Mercury and Venus aligning, right? And it's boosting clear communication, but it's also creating challenging aspects like Neptune, right? So we have to remain grounded. Be wary of feeling high in energy and bold and etc., but don't go too crazy on something because there's a lot going on and things that we're not even seeing yet. There's more that will be seen in the coming weeks, in the coming months, especially leading up to, I think it's September. That's what I'm getting intuitively, where there's like I believe there's another eclipse, and that's the situation. So much more is going to be seen at that point, and it's all unfolding now. So sign by sign highlights before we hop off. Sagittarius, fire signs, right? Sagittarius, a spotlight on personal identity. Now, while you listen to this, don't just listen to your sun sign, listening to your rising sign as well, right? Or even if your moon sign, if you know. So Sagittarius, a spotlight on personal identity and authenticity. It's time for you to claim your boldest vision, to really just go into what you're dreaming and take that risk and jump into it. Maybe it's a joyful thing. Maybe it's not a risk per se, but it's just jump into it. Aries and Leo, you are going to be inspired by optimism, creativity, and an emotional catharsis. Maybe things have reached to a point. I need to cry about it, let it out, and ask for help, okay? From spirit guides, from ancestors, but also from people in bodies who can, do certain things for you that you need done. Don't try to do it all yourself, Aries and Leo. So air and earth signs. Gemini, relationship revelations and communication breakthroughs, mindset shifts. Because it's an opposition to Sag, right? There are a lot of things that are going to be revealed about relationships, about communication. Pay attention to what you say. You can't say everything to everyone. Alguna gente are not going to take it right. Some people aren't going to take it right. Maybe it's not coming out right either. Virgo, you are going to nurture yourself a rejuvenation. You have to have closure with some of the emotional cycles that you've been going through of loss, of grief, of feeling left out. You've got to really let that go, end that story, nurture yourself, and create a new story because a lot of good things are coming your way. Water signs. And Taurus. Hello, Taurus. Kind of like forgot about Taurus. But Taurus, you are also in a time of being inspired, but do not overextend yourself. Do not overextend. Do not overgive. Nurture, root down, be inspired internally. And don't worry about inspiring everybody. Inspire your own booty, okay? Cuídate a ti mismo, por favor, Tauro. Water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Okay, all of you, right? Emotional detoxes. You need to detox. You need to self-care. If you have the moon, the rising, or the sun in one of the water signs, because Jupiter just went into Cancer, you really need to reassess your protection rituals or protection practices, your grounding, your clearing, and your cleansing, because now we're going to be redefining internal narratives. Now, I was just talking about cleansing and self-care. This is a great time right now after the full moon. It's already the day after to do releasement, right? release, reset rituals, symbolically releasing old beliefs, write things down, burn them in a safe container. Don't burn them in something that will set a fire in your house, please. Expand through learning, take new courses, explore new cultures, trying something outside of the norm. This moon is supporting big picture shifts, right? Go with the flow. Do not burn yourself out, please. With dreamy Neptune in play, chasing perfection can backfire. Do not feel like everything has to be dotted or the T's crossed or the I's dotted, right? Sometimes we just have to place progress over perfection, and just getting her done is the most important thing. A veces terminando la cosa es lo más importante, que no sea perfecto, pero más bien que sea, ¿no? Hay que hacerlo. Practice presence, spontaneity, playfulness over perfection. We just can't. And so there's a lot going on. There's a deep invitation for us to find what our truths are. Many of you already know your truths. I'm not here purporting or thinking that I'm giving them to you, but I just wanted to bring up this conversation. What are some of the truths that in this full moon you have really rooted within your soul, within your heart, within your spirit? I'd love to hear it. If you want to comment below or post or share with me, what are some of the big picture holistic perspectives that you've really been like, wow? Because this full moon is coming in with the bigger vision, with optimism, with strength, but also asking us to look at our truths, right? And to let go of outdated patterns. If you've enjoyed this and you would like to have a one-on-one session, my one-on-one astrology session is usually $275, but I still have the $150 for the year, the astro cycles for the year and the astro potentials. It's right there in my Booksy links if you're interested. I still also have my special $97 for 30 minutes. We open the soul records, we do a deep dive, a deep read to connect you with the information that you need now. I hope that this is, I don't know, I hope that this has filled you, because there's no words. That's why I don't know, because I do know. But there's no words because there's so much. Each of us are dealing and navigating so much tremendous joy, pain, stress, fear, wonderment, expansion, going through all the things. So I hope that it's brought you some peace, some love, because I'm sending it to you, and to know that it's okay to stand in our truth, and that each and every one of us as a collective are on this incredible journey to bring more healing to the planet. And while it looks like it's so far, I still believe, I still have hope, and I know that if each and every one of us does what we can in our part of the world, in our part of the community, in our part of our home, in our part of our clients, etc., and with the people that we love and the spaces that we're in, de poco a poco we're going to do it. Mucho, mucho amor. Gracias.